Hi everybody, it's Mariana with Three Peaks Classroom. I am so incredibly honored to be able to share with you this read aloud story called Enough, written by Marsha Skrypuch, which talks about the Holodomor, or the Great Famine that happened in Ukraine in the 1930s. It's written for an audience for students between the grades of, I would say, grades 2 to 6, because it talks about death and graveyards. I'm very honored. I was given explicit permission from the publishing company Fitzhenry and Whiteside in order to be able to share this read aloud with you on YouTube. If you are looking for complementary materials to talk about and to teach about Holodomor in your classroom, I have a wide variety of products in my TPT store. You can search up slideshows or coloring pages or worksheets, comprehension pages that talk about and teach about the Holodomor. So without any further ado, please enjoy this read aloud of Enough.
Hi everybody! Today I want to read a story to you that happened during the Holodomor in Ukraine, which we know happened in the 1930s. This story is called Enough, and it's written by Marsha Skrypuch, and it is illustrated by Micheal Martchenko. Marusia lived on the farm with her father near the village of Życia. Because their farm was small, even in the best of years, they had barely enough food to survive. Then, one harvest, the crop was very good. Marusia and her tato, which means father, planned a party as they gathered all of their wheat. But just as they were finished, a soldier arrived. "We have a dictator now," he said, "so all of your wheat and farm belong to the people." "We are the people," said Marusia, "and this wheat is enough to feed the two of us all of this winter and maybe even the next." "We'll see about that," said the soldier. Marusia watched the soldier walk away. "This isn't the end of it," she said. "The dictator's soldiers will come and they'll take the whole crop." She hid some grain deep in her hope chest, and as she closed the lid, horses' hooves thundered through the village. At gunpoint, Marusia and the villagers stood by while the soldiers searched all of the houses and the barns for every single grain of wheat. Then the soldiers piled the grain onto the wagons and carried it away. In the whole village of Życia, the only grain that they missed was that sackful that Marusia had hid secretly. That winter was harder than ever. Each morning, Marusia made thin porridge to share with everybody in the village. By spring, there was only one little handful of seeds. "If we eat this," Marusia said to her tato, "it will be gone. But if we plant it, then we will grow more." So they planted it, and they waited day after day, after hungry day, for the smallest sign of life. Then one morning, Marusia shouted, "Tato, look!" Outside was the biggest stalk of wheat that they had ever seen. Marusia tied a babushka under her chin and ran out for a better look. But as she approached the stalk, a huge stork bird swooped down from the sky, sat on the very tip, and nibbled at the tender new shoots. "We can share it if you're hungry," said Marusia to the bird. "But this is all the wheat that we have to eat." "In this whole village you have nothing else?" asked the stork. Marusia nodded. "Then hop on my back and I will help you." Marusia wrapped her arms around the stork's neck and up they went. As they flew, Marusia saw all the fields below were bare and empty. Throughout the once rich land of Ukraine, there were only patches of shoveled soil and the graveyards. And there were plenty of those. The bird flew over all of the dictator's empire. Piles of wheat overflowed the granaries, and they were just laying there rotting. Yet the soldiers were bringing more and more carts of wheat. It seemed like the dictator would never have enough. The stork flew over a great ocean and farther onto a new world, Canada. Marusia watched in wonder as cities changed to forest, changed to lakes, and then she saw all the endless prairies dotted with patches of dust and wheat. Joyously, Marusia greeted women, men dressed in clothing of Ukraine, working in the fields. They waved to her, and one woman even called, "Times are very hard right now, but we are happy to share." After landing, the bird waited while Marusia jumped from his back. "Take what you need," he told her. Marusia tugged at the scarf that was tied under her chin and filled it with the grain. She climbed back onto the stork, balancing the seeds in front of her, and as they flew into the air, Marusia called her thanks to all of the smiling faces below. "Give our love to our cousins back in Ukraine," the people shouted. "Are you sure that you've taken enough?" "Oh yes," Marusia answered. "Oh yes, I have plenty to plant. Thank you." The stork went back to Ukraine. Tato ran to greet her, relieved that his daughter was safe. Then he placed a dish of water and a bowl full of seeds for the tired bird to eat. Soon the rest of the villagers gathered around to hear the story, thrilled by Marusia's good luck. One by one, Marusia gave them each a handful of seeds to plant in their field. One by one, each of the villagers went home to share the tale. Hearing their chatter, Marusia's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. She hid the rest of the grain in her hope chest, just in case. Soon the fields in the village of Zhytia shone with wheat. Now the time for harvest came near, and the villagers were very happy. In the morning, they would go to work, and in the evening, they would eat. But in the morning, they woke up instead to empty fields and soldiers with full carts fading into the distance. Even Marusia's wondrous stock had been picked clean. Behind the soldiers walked an officer, and on his face was a smile. In his pocket, he carried a secret that he wouldn't even share, not even with the dictator. In his pocket, he carried the special seeds that he had taken from Marusia's magic stock. That officer planted the seeds in his own garden, even though he had so much grain that his barn was bursting. One morning, he looked outside and laughed with joy. A stalk of wheat had grown in the night, shooting as high as the roof of his house. The officer ran towards it just as the stork flew to the tip and began to eat, just like Marusia's. Now the officer almost commanded the bird to stop, but then he remembered what happened to Marusia. "Please," he cried, please, that's all my soldiers have to eat." "You have nothing else?" asked the stork. The officer shook his head and pretended to cry. "Then hop on my back," said the stork, "and I will help you." The officer jumped on the stork's back and up they went. Down below, the officer's bulging barn looked like a child's wooden block. They flew over empty fields that were full of the graveyards. In all of Ukraine, the only patch of green was the tiny little village of Zhytia. They flew over the ocean until they arrived to the New World, Canada. The officer held the stork's neck tightly as the cities changed to forests, changed to lakes, then to the rolling prairies where the women and men worked in the lush fields. They looked up as the bird passed, waving to him to welcome again. The officer gasped. It looked so much like Ukraine before the hunger. Landing beside the brimming silo, the bird waited for the officer to jump from his back. "Take what you need," the stork said. The officer took 3 bags from his pockets and stuffed them full. But when he saw all the grain that was left in the silo, he felt that he didn't have enough. He took off his jacket and made it into a sack, and then he took off his pants to make another sack. Dressed in his underwear and holding the heavy sacks, he then climbed onto the very heavy bird. The sacks were so heavy that it was hard to keep them from falling. As the stork flew into the air, the officer looked down at the people who stared angrily back at him. "Wait! You haven't left us enough," one woman called to him. "I'll be back for the rest." When they were again over the ocean, the stork slowed in exhaustion and dipped dangerously close to the water. "I cannot carry this load any further," he groaned. "You must," declared the officer. "Try harder." The stork tried, but he wasn't strong enough. He spiraled helplessly down in a free fall. Then, as his wings touched the surface of the water, the officer and all of the wheat slid from his back and dropped into the icy sea. With the load gone, the stork was free. Once more, he flew over the very bare countryside of Ukraine. When Marusia saw the bird sitting outside her cottage, she brought him a bowl of water and some seeds. She heard all that the officer had seen and done, but she did not feel satisfied that the village was safe yet. After the stork flew away, Marusia told the story to her tato. "We still must hide our grain," Marusia said. "The officer is only one man, and the dictator has men like him plenty around." "Oh, they'll just find our grain and again, and we will continue to starve," declared Tato. "Soon, our village will be nothing but a gravesite." "Oh, that's it," cried Marusia, snapping her fingers. Is it not the dictator's wish that this land be filled with graves instead?" Her father nodded sadly. "Well, we'll give him what he wants, but our graves will be filled with wheat." Tato's eyes sparkled. Together, Marusia and Tato told the villagers of their secret plan. As soon as the grain was threshed, the villagers loaded it into sacks, and then they buried the sacks in the graves. Soon, they ran out of sacks. "Use your babushkas, use your shirts, use your shawls, use your pants, use everything. We must bury the rest of this grain." The villagers worked very hard, burying the clothes in quickly filling graveyards. The news of the huge graveyard in Życia reached the dictator. "Oh, what good citizens," he said. "Oh, you've sacrificed so much." He called for his horse so he could go and see the village himself. When Marusia spied the soldiers in the distance, she ran out to the villagers. "The dictator cannot find us all alive. Most of you hide. There should only be a few of us left to greet him." Then she and the remaining villagers hurried over to cover up the last graves. The dictator stepped down from his horse and surveyed the vast graveyard with satisfaction. "Oh, so this is all that remains of Życia," he said, and then he looked down and he gasped. Horrified, Marusia saw a scrap of cloth along with a few grains of wheat sticking out from the very last grave. The dictator frowned. Reaching down, he grabbed a handful of dirt and threw it over the scrap of cloth. "Are you guys so silly that you bury your people without coffins?" he cried. Marusia hid a smile. "Forgive us, sir," she said, "but not everybody can be as smart as you." The dictator stood up and brushed dirt from his uniform. "Ah, how right you are," he said. He got back up on his horse and rode away, not giving the village another thought. Behind the dictator, the cottages emptied and the streets of Życia filled with people hugging each other with tears of joy. "Now we will all have enough," said Marusia.